everyone, and welcome to the Nomad Tea Festival Europe. My name is Ricardo Caicedo, and I blog at myjapanesegreentea.com. And today's workshop is about an introduction to Sencha, which is the most popular Japanese tea. But before we go into Sencha, I'm gonna talk to you a little about Japanese green tea in general. And well, of course, you know that tea comes from the Camellia sinensis, the tea plant. And in Japan, it has more than 1,000 years of history. More exactly, would be around the year 800 AD, when there are written records that at that time, some Buddhist monks from Japan, they brought tea seeds from China. So that's the earliest written evidence, but for all we know, it could have been before. However, there's no evidence of that yet. And mostly Japanese tea is green tea. So Japan is practically a specialist in green tea. And maybe you've experienced it, but Japanese green tea is very different from Chinese green tea. And we'll talk about why in a moment. But first of all, let's see what green tea is. So you might be wondering why there's the picture of an apple. I like to explain about green tea and black tea with the example of the apple that it's becoming brown. So as soon as the apple, when you cut an apple in half, let's say, and you wait some hours, it starts browning. This is due to oxidation, and oxidation happens because of the enzymes in not only in the tea plant, but in all plants. And if you look at the left, that would be like green tea. And the right, when the apple is much more brown, that would be like black tea. So by definition, green tea is minimally oxidized, while black tea is almost fully oxidized. So how do we stop green tea from becoming black? How do we fix the oxidation? So this happens through heat. At the left, we see the Chinese method. Most used method in China is pan firing. So it would be just like using a wok with the tea leaves and hitting them that way, and the oxidation is stopped because the enzymes are deactivated. And in the right, you'll see the steaming method, which is what is mostly used in Japan. So coming back to another analogy of food, let's say you had a broccoli and you cut it in half. One half goes to the wok and the other half goes to the steamer. So at the end, the broccoli is going to be quite different. So the one in the steamer is going to smell very fresh. It's going to feel very fresh, while the one that was pan fired, maybe it has not all this freshness, but a sweeter aroma. So that's one of the main differences why Japanese green tea is different from Chinese. Okay, let's talk about Sencha now. So Sencha is the most popular tea in Japan. About 70% of what people drink or what Japan produces is actually Sencha, because people outside Japan, they normally think that everyone is drinking matcha inside Japan, since matcha is so popular. But actually, Sencha is the most popular tea. It also has the most variety, because since it's produced at such a big scale, there's Sencha from many regions. There's different types of Sencha. They make Sencha in different types of cultivars. Usually when you drink a single cultivar tea, it's usually Sencha. Sencha, it's not really, and it's kind of new. So it was invented by Nagatani Soen in the 18th century, which is quite recent. Before that, there was mostly powdered tea, like matcha, and there were other crude types of green tea that at the time they were much lower quality than the Chinese green teas, but this changed when Nagatani Soen invented sencha. You can see it in the picture, the traditional needle shapes. So they look like very thin and finely rolled needles. And once you examine it, it's very refreshing. It has this marine tone to it, like seaweed. Some people maybe even feel like seawater. There's a light sweetness to it. And also, and very importantly, it has a lot of umami taste. I don't have a lot of time in this presentation to explain about umami, but it is the fifth taste next to sweet, bitter, salty, and sour. So it's very basic. In Japanese tea, you feel like if it was brothy, like if it was much more dense. It gives body to the tea. The more umami, the better in terms of sencha. How is sencha made? First, it is harvested, but the cultivation process does not involve shading. So the shading process is used, for example, in matcha, in gyokuro, but traditionally it is unshaded. However, nowadays, some of the sencha we see is actually a kabusecha, which means it is shaded, but not as much as a gyokuro. So normally it wouldn't be shaded, but nowadays we have some sencha that is shaded and called sencha anyway. The harvest has to be the first or the second harvest of the year after spring. Spring is the first harvest. If it would be later harvest, then it wouldn't be sencha. And of course, we have to steam it to stop the oxidation. Then it's dried and rolled. And this isn't done in one step. So the drying and rolling is done at the same time. And there are different machines that do different drying and rolling steps. So it's not just one machine. And once you do that, you obtain aracha. Aracha is a crude tea. So it's still not sencha, and sencha is just a part of aracha. Aracha contains everything, so the stems, the twigs, like maybe some tea leaves that are too big, or tea buds, so tea dust. So that must be filtered out to get sencha. So after aracha is made, then there's another factory that does their refining, which are usually like wholesalers. And the refining, which is called shiage in Japanese, first they sort it. So they sort the leaf size with wire meshes. And then they also do firing called hire. And this isn't a strong heat, so it's not roasting. It's more like a light drying. So it dries it a little further, but more important than that, it gives it a better aroma and a better flavor. And finally, there's blending, not all the time, but usually in Japan, they'll blend sencha of different origins or of different cultivars to obtain a specific aroma and flavor profile. And of course, there's the manual way of doing it, which is what Nagatani Soen invented. Nowadays, it's very rare, but the tradition is still kept alive. And as you can see, you'll obtain the same needle shape, even if you do it by hand. But it's really, it takes about 4 hours. So and you need a team. It's not one person only. So it is very time consuming. And if you think about it, if someone takes the time to properly roll sencha, it means that it matters. So a well-rolled tea will look better, smell better, and taste better than a badly rolled sencha. And there's not only one type of sencha, there's different. So for example, we have shincha. Shin means new in Japanese. So Sencha refers to the first tea of the year, the first harvest. And it usually means that it is the year we're talking in. So it cannot be a Sencha from 2 years before. It wouldn't be useful because people want that freshness. And Sencha has a very special freshness that you should experience um, just by smelling the dry leaves and of course the wet leaves. So people really like Sencha, and it is of course much more expensive than Sencha from the second harvest, which would be summer. Besides that, there are types of Sencha depending on the steaming time. So remember, the steaming is used to fix the green tea, but it adds more characteristics. So there is light steaming, asamushi, there is normal steaming, futsumushi, and there is deep steaming, which is the fukamushi sencha. Normal steam tea would be around 30 to 40 seconds of steaming time. Asamushi would be lower than 30, and fukamushi would be more than 40, like a minute or more. And why do they change this? Because some of the teas, when they are lightly steamed, the tea leaves are more intact. It has a better aroma. But on the other side, if you deep steam a tea, the color looks very good. It is a very deep green. For some people, it's very desirable. It has less astringency that way, and also more body. But unfortunately, when you deep steam a tea, like you can see in the picture, the tea leaves become very fragile. So they break down. There's a lot of tea dust, and as you can see, it's usually broken down. So for fukamushi sencha, it's okay if the tea leaves look broken down. For the other types of tea, it isn't. Another thing to notice that sencha is very different from bancha. Bancha is another common Japanese green tea. And the only difference, the process is the same, but the difference is the harvest. And you can see the difference right away. So bancha would be the third or fourth harvest of the year, not the first ones. And that tea leaf is bigger, it has more fiber, so it's harder. It does not have like as much concentrated flavor. It smells weaker, it tastes weaker, has less umami taste. And the way to explain it is, if you have like this little paper, very thin paper, it's easy to roll into a needle because it's very thin. But if you had cardboard, you try to roll it and it doesn't really roll well, so it kind of goes over like this. And that's what's happening in Bancha. The leaves kind of are little square shaped, like little rectangles, because it's so hard. And fiber does not taste like anything, so it is dead weight. What this basically means is Sencha is much better quality than Bancha because it's a better harvest. Sometimes some Chinese teas that are called Sencha, which they usually use for blends and the like, they are actually Bancha. If you look at them, they do not look like a Sencha. And that's one way to judge the quality of Sencha. So in order for you to do this, you actually need some experience, but you can start doing it right now. And you need to inspect not only the taste, but also the appearance, the aroma of the wet leaves, the dry leaves, and the color of the liquor. So regarding the leaves, the aroma of the leaves, once you open the package and you smell it, If it smells fresh, if it has this sweetness to it, and if it has um, this deep aroma, so it's very intense, then it's probably a good quality Sencha. If it doesn't smell very much, if it has a smell that, you know, it's off, like, I don't know, smoky or like mold, you know, it's very weak, then the quality mustn't be so good. And the wet tea leaves, the same applies. So wet tea leaves are even more important. That wet tea aroma is even stronger, and you can tell if it's a good Sencha or not. About the appearance of the tea leaves, as I had told you, the tightly rolled leaves are much better quality than the loosely rolled tea leaves. If they are very dark green, the darker the better. If it's very pale, then it's not as good. And also, they should be uniform in size. So if they all look sort of the same, it's a good indication. But if they are like some very big leaves, some very small ones, tea dust, some are broken down, some are not, then it's not as good. Another thing is that the green tea leaves of high quality Sencha, they have this luster to them. They shine a little. That would be good. Regarding the color of the liquor, so once you brew it, what color is it? It should be like yellow and green, um, not very dark and not very pale. And also it should have this live quality to it, like it gives you an indication of how concentrated the flavor will be. It's also takes some experience, but for example, if it was almost transparent, white, you know, like if it had not looked like water, or if it was brown or something, then that's a lower quality green tea to begin with. And finally, there's the taste. Of course, it should have some sweetness, very refreshing, this vegetal freshness of green tea. Umami taste, the more umami, the better. And there should be a balance with all this. And it could have a little astringency, but not so much. And it shouldn't be very bitter. So bitterness and a lot of astringency, it means low quality tea, or that you prepared it incorrectly. Let's see how to prepare normal steam sencha. And sencha in general, I would say the idea is that it feels very fresh, like if you were inside a tea field. And it also feels a little marine, like seaweed. And that is pretty much what happens with most Japanese green teas. And it does not happen in most Chinese green teas. So that's a main difference. It has to do with the terroir of Japan, you know, the elevation, temperature, climate, the soil, everything, but also a lot to do with Japanese tea cultivars. So for normal steam sencha, which is Futsumushi sencha, you need 1 teaspoon, that's about 3 or 4 grams, say 2 ounces, which is 60 milliliters of hot water. It should not be boiling. If it's boiling, it would become bitter, too bitter. So that's about 80 degrees Celsius. For our American friends, that's 176 Fahrenheit. And the infusion time is 1 minute. At least 3 steepings in total. Some teas can do 4, but 3 is kind of the average. And this is the standard way as recommended by the Nihon Cha Instructor Association. I recommend that you start with this one, and then you can change it as you like. But what usually happens, even the Japanese tea companies, they would tell the people in the US or in Europe to use much more water and more time and less infusions, so it's less concentrated. The reason they do this is because they're sort of making it easier for Westerners. So it's a Western style of brewing where you're supposed to use much more water because the Western people, they have the mugs and the big teacups, while the Japanese teacups are very small. There's some bigger than this one, but this is 2 ounces, 60 milliliters. I'm gonna demonstrate to you right now how to do it. It's very simple, but in case you haven't done it, I'm gonna tell you how it's done. Very well. So here we have a Unomi, and there's some bigger Unomi, but there's the smaller ones, which are 2 ounces. This is very small, by the way. There's bigger ones. We have our tea, our Sencha. Hope you can see it well. I already measured, this is 1 teaspoon, which is about 3 to 4 grams. And then here's the kyusu, which is the Japanese teapot. And I also brought a yusamashi, which we'll use to cool down the water. I guess we don't need the spoon anymore. So all we do is we put our tea leaves in the kyusu. And now we need the water at 80 degrees Celsius. Over here I have my tea kettle and it's boiling. So I'm gonna pour the 2 ounces. I can feel if it's cool or not, so it takes some experience, I guess. If not, you can use a thermometer. It doesn't have to be exactly the 80 degrees. It should be 90 degrees, and then when we serve it, it would cool down and it would reach the 80. So the traditional way of doing this in Japan is if it boils at 100 and then I put it in another container, it would go down to 90. And then when I put it in the next container, it would go down to 80. Or if you don't have this, you could also use a teacup and measure it there. It has the bonus that it'll heat the teacup for you in case it's a cold day. So it already cooled down. I'm gonna measure the time. So 1 minute of infusion time. If it was a Fukamushi Sencha, it would be only 40 seconds, for example. So I'm gonna pour it, cover the lid, and we'll wait for 1 minute. So while we do that, I'll explain something else. Suppose you had 3, well, we only have 2 right now, but suppose we had three teacups. The way to serve is 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, so that they're even. If you only served 1 and then the second and then the third one, and this was the kyusu with the tea leaves, then the third one would be stronger because the tea leaves kept infusing as I poured. So that's the Japanese way of making sure everything is the same, and it's called mawashi sosogi. But we're only gonna serve 1 right now. And the way we do it is keep the lid in place. You could do it this way or with the second hand, and not everything in one serving, but like rocking so that all the back and forth, so that all the tea leaves get wet. So it's not just one pour and all the leaves on the front get wet. So yeah, you just have to do it more times. And it's better if you serve until the last drop. It doesn't have to be exactly the last drop, but if you leave too much water in the kyusu, your next infusion will be too strong because you left water in here, and while you were drinking the first infusion, it kept infusing. So it's better if there's no more tea leaves. And now we can take the time and smell the tea leaves and look at the appearance of the tea leaves. Very refreshing, very sweet. I'm not sure if you can see those. But this is a Sencha. It's not hot, so we can drink it right away. It feels very refreshing. It should not be bitter. If it's very bitter, it means you overbrewed it in terms of time, or you used too high temperature. And yeah, that's what Sencha is. So right now we're going to go into the Q&A in a moment. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much and enjoy your Sencha. Goodbye.
Hi, Ricardo. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge about Japanese Sencha. Let's see what kind of question we have from the audience. And I recognize some of the returners. Hi, Amanda. Hi, Nico.
Hello, Sue. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining in. So what made you interested in Japanese tea? Because there are numerous teas around the world.
So first thing, I was interested in Japan, and I learned the language, and I went there as a foreign student, and I studied there. So first it was Japan, and then while I was there, I became interested in Japanese tea.
Are you drinking Japanese tea right now, like nearby your side?
I have this little kyusu,
and
I'm drinking some.
Well, what is it? Like a glass teacup?
Yeah, let me show you an empty one. Yeah, this one is made of glass. It's really good to see the liquor.
Yeah, I like when it's transparent. Yes, also asked, I would like to know about artwork behind you, because you have some painting behind. Could you tell us what it's about?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if you can see well, but there's this pigeon that is hanging down and it's dead. And
oh, I thought it was teacup when it was down.
Okay, so this is the pigeon, and this means it's a war, the war of the Gulf War. So that's why there's water, and the opposing forces, and the pigeon is dead, which was peace. That's what the painter thought about, and it was the ex of my mother from Spain. He painted.
Thanks for sharing it. If back to the name of the producer in Colombia, could you type it in the chat so we can also look it up?
Okay, I'm going to type it. So it's,
and while you are typing, I will go through the questions from the audience.
So it's Bitaco.
And Donnelly also asked whether you could type out the name of Japanese teapot and the other vessel.
Okay, so the teapot is Kyusu, and the other vessel it's called Yuzamashi, which means like tea. I misspelled it. Hold on. Like tea cooler. Like yu is hot water in Japanese, so it's like hot water cooler. I just made another one, so maybe you can see. This is a very small kyusu, like a personal one, only 60 milliliters.
Oh, 60 milliliter.
Yeah.
Along
Someone
with
asked,
the 60 milliliter, Arba asked, you said that you usually use 3 or 4 grams for 60 milliliter. Does this mean that if my Kyushu is 200 milliliter, I should use around 10 grams each time?
it depends on how much you want to drink, because the idea of the bigger Kyusus, there's some that are like, I think the normal would be 360 milliliters. There is the Unomi, which is, there is another teacup that is much bigger than this one. The tall one that you see in like Japanese restaurant, that is like little cylinder. So that one is 120 milliliters, which means that that Kyusu can make 3 of those, or it could make 6 of these. So often those bigger Kyusus, the idea is to make more teacups at once in case that you are with more friends. If you have very small Kyusu, this one would be just for you. But if you would want to make more tea at the same time, then yes, you would use more tea leaves because you're using more water.
Do you like to drink tea stronger? Or it depends on your day?
Yeah, I also, I guess when one is used to making small amounts of tea, you start, sometimes you say, let's add a little more. So I guess it depends on your taste, but the stronger it is, I think it's easier on the tasting. If it's too weak, it's hard to tell, because it's mostly water. So I think it's good to have it strong and every once in a while.
Same. Nicole asked, what is your favorite cultivar for Sencha? Do you have your favorite cultivar that you enjoy drinking?
The most common one is Yabukita, and I like that one. It is very common, so easy to find. But other than that, I really enjoy the Asatsuyu. I'm gonna write it down just in case. The Asatsuyu it has this nickname of natural Gyokuro. And what it means is that even if you don't shade it like a Gyokuro, the Sencha would have a lot of umami. So it has powerful umami taste, and that's something I like.
Yeah. And along with the cultivar question, Gatis asked any unique taste cultivar suggestion. Was there any cultivar you tasted, very unique or known for uniqueness?
So there are some that are very unique, but also it is very weird. So some of the cultivars, maybe you don't like them, One that I liked and it was very unique, I'm gonna put it in the chat again because it's hard to say it, but it's Shizu, I think I'm spelling it right, 7132. The last time I have it was like 2 months ago, I guess. That one is, instead of being very marine, it's very floral. And in Japan, they say that it's a lot like cherry blossom aroma. I forgot if it really does smell like cherry blossom because I haven't been in Japan in a while, but it's very different. So if you like more floral aromas, it would be good.
Yeah, that's unique. So it's tea leaf, but has characteristic of cherry blossom, you are saying, right?
Yes. So the cultivar, it changes everything. So if you have one sencha from one cultivar and then you try a different cultivar, you would be thinking, is this really a sencha? So some of them are very, very different.
Let's see whether I missed any. What do you think of preparing the 3 infusions one after another? Put them together in a thermal bottle and drink it during the day.
So what I suggest is cold brewing. As I said before, if you make, you can just leave it all night in the refrigerator. One quick way to do it would be 1 liter of water per 10 grams of tea leaves. And it minimum has to be 8-hour infusion. That's why you leave it in the refrigerator in your jar. And the next day you filter out the tea leaves and then you have all the tea. So it requires no effort because it will infuse where you are sleeping. And
Yeah.
it also doesn't require heating up water, so maybe it saves some energy.
Do you find that just putting in refrigerator better than room temperature? I mean, if there is a possibility of growing.
Yeah, you can also do it on room temperature if you want. The reason it's better in the refrigerator is just in case, because
Just in case.
less chance for bacteria and mold. But I'm sure if you're gonna drink it right away, you could do it at room temperature.
We are doing in refrigerator at least 8 hours.
Yes, even if it goes 10 hours, 12 hours, nothing's gonna happen. It's never gonna become bitter. But
and how within how many days should we drink? Like once we brew, like within 3 days, like how long does it last?
I think it could last a week or more, but the flavor and aroma will start to change. So for
That's true.
best,
Yeah.
the best would be same day, but if you don't have the time, you can keep it for more. Without the tea leaves, just only the liquid.
Thank you. And Joanne asked, may I ask how you clean the steeped leaves from the gyushu after? Is there a trick to getting all the leaves out?
Yeah, well, as you can see, they kind of stick together. So one thing that these are already kind of dry, but let's say they weren't so dry. What people do is they do like this. So they hit it against the palm of your hand, and it kind of loses them. It fell off, and then you just throw it away. If it would still have some tea leaves, so you just rinse it. You put water inside and then throw everything away. And maybe at the end it has some little ones. You could take them out with your finger, but it's not recommended to maybe brush it too hard or something, because these sometimes if it is a metal filter like this mesh, if you use a toothbrush, sometimes it leaves little, it plugs down the holes. I'm not sure how to explain it. So yeah, you don't just scrape the mesh. Just rinse it out. I think that the same person is asking why not mix the hot infusions? Yes, you can mix the hot infusions if you want, because it would be almost the same. The cold infusion, we're using more water and more time, but only one infusion because it's more water. If you would have different infusions and then stack them, the results should be somewhat similar, I guess. So yes, you can do that as well.
Another question from Lee. What about keeping the spent leaves and using them in cooking? Do you also use brewed leaves for cooking?
Yes, sometimes I do, especially if it's a very high quality tea, because it would be a waste to throw them away, let's say. So you could use them in many ways. For example, just like in your salad, it tastes like spinach. If you want, maybe you can add, it's not very much, just a little drops of soy sauce and eat them that way. And also you can dry them and use them dry, like if it was some kind of herb. There's ways to recycle them or use for composting. Some people do it. But yeah, and not only spent leaves, you could cook with the whole leaves, because tea, it doesn't have to be infused in water only. You could infuse them in hot cream, in butter, in alcohol, you know. So there's a lot of ways to cook with tea. I'm not very good at cooking, but you could do it.
Thanks for sharing. There was a question that I scrolled, can't find it now. It was about water and tea. So in Europe, water is harder. So the person asked whether that would impact the quality.
Yes, the water is, I'm not sure the exact amount, but let's say it's like 99% water and 1% tea. So if you start with very bad water, it doesn't matter if your tea is great. And in Japan, what they usually say is that the best water for Japanese tea is soft water. And where I live, it's also very soft. Even the one from the tap, it's good. But in other cities in my country, it wouldn't be as good. So maybe if you filter it, or maybe if you try, I don't know, bottled water or something. That's very advanced topic to answer in just a few minutes. But yes, the better the water, the better your tea will be.
And we had several questions regards to water. And in the past festival, Michael talked about water and tea. So you can find that info through our website. And you can also follow Ricardo on Instagram. Oh. Do you have Instagram?
I do, but it's all in Spanish.
But mostly Facebook.
So it's mostly
Facebook and blog.
Facebook and Twitter. If you want to read it in Spanish, you can follow me on Instagram. But it's a little different than the blog, but it's still about tea.
Gotcha. And you can find his socials on our website, so you can follow him. And then Ricardo writes very in-depth but easy to follow blog post. So I also recommend you check out his blog as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your workshop answering questions. I will see you later.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.